This is just such a powerful film. Amazingly, this is your first feature film in German. How is that possible, for one, to start?
Well, I left Germany 25 years ago, and I left when I wasn't an actress. And I went to drama school in France, and I started making films there and then here. And so, I don't know, I guess they kind of forgot about me. I don't know. I was always hoping for a film, for an offer out of Germany. And then this happened because I knew Fatih's movies and I was a huge fan. And I was a jury member at the Cannes Film Festival in 2012. And he had a documentary in a parallel selection. And I thought this was my opportunity. And so I went to his party and said, please, if you ever have anything, I would love to make a film with you. And he remembered.
It was a beach party, right?
Yeah, it was a beach party. It was a really good party, and I was quite drunk because I was so intimidated, meeting him. So was he, thankfully, because it's Cannes and everybody's drunk. But I really meant it. His films, like growing up in Germany and then living in France, his films travel. Usually, they're being shown in France, which is not typical for a German movie. And I just always responded to his cinema. He's a Turkish man, born in Germany, but born to Turkish immigrants. And all of his films, I don't know if you're familiar with, tackle sort of the immigration problems in Germany. And, he always felt like an outsider. And all my life, I felt like an outsider being German, but leaving so young, and going back there and feeling like I don't really fit in. And it really connected us.
Yeah, if you guys have never seen Gegen die Wand, Head On, or
No.
The Edge of Heaven, I mean, just incredible movies by Fatih Akin. What do you think? He does address themes of immigration and cultural assimilation quite a lot, but what do you think is really at the heart of kind of like his storytelling ability? Like, what is he? How is he as a dramatist?
I would say that he's a very, in a way, very simple man. He loves his family. He wrote this originally thinking that this was a male protagonist, and he wrote the story coming out of anger because he faced a lot of racism when he grew up in Germany. And this is based on a true story, and he was so angered by the fact that the Turkish immigrants who were the victims were being accused as being obviously part of the problem. And he said that once he started changing, the protagonist into a female, everything fell in place because all her motivations for what she was going to do felt right. And he's a family man. His wife is the casting director, and it's just, I don't know. He's always looking for the truth.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting that he said that he really sees you as his alter ego in the film. That your character Katja really represents his ideas about justice and revenge. And what kind of direction did he give you throughout? I mean, is he a very hands-on director, or did he let you find the character on your own a lot?
He's very hands-on on the day-to-day set, but to prep for this movie, I started prepping this film 6 months before we started filming. Only because, I don't have children. I have never experienced such grief. And I wasn't quite sure how I could do it justice and how I could find my way into this character. So I live in New York, and I started going to self-help groups of victims, not just terrorism, but also really brutal murder. And honestly, it's something I will never forget, and I didn't quite understand that it would affect me quite as much. Obviously, I thought I was going to hear terrible stories. But as the the weeks kept passing by, and in the beginning, you sit in and you feel, to be honest, you feel like an asshole because you're asking all these questions, these personal questions, And then quickly I realized that I just needed to listen and absorb and watch. And that kind of grief, that kind of loss under horrific circumstances is something that I just, it's very difficult even to describe it, and it's lots of actors here, and I think you probably understand what it feels like. You open yourself up to allow yourself to take in that energy and to feel their pain. And I don't know, I just it's in a way, like, I got this acute horrible responsibility of making sure that I'm just, and I make sure that they are represented, in what I'm going to do, and I'm not just acting. I feel their pain.
That is so beautiful and amazing that you did that level of preparation for this film. And you know, I think this film captures just that sense of sorrow, that sense of grief, just so magnificently, and so, to such a heart aching degree. So that was your preparation leading up to the film. But on set, what was it like? Was there a sense of, did you keep it? Was it very serious for one, or was it or was it lighter? Or
And no, it was pretty serious. I mean, we shot in order, which is really unusual. And I think that helped me a lot. There were definitely scenes I felt like I wasn't acting, I was just reacting to whatever situation was happening. But Fatih is also, he's very hands-on. He definitely reined me in, he pushed me. And then sometimes he just let me be, it's one of those times, when you have a lot of time, or when you give a lot of time, you have the luxury of time to give to a director and to prepare a movie properly. I think once you're on set, you don't search. It's all there. It's you trust your director, and things just happen. And it really felt like with that in this film, it's all there.
so you've spent most of your career, working outside Germany, and did it take you a little while to get acclimated in a way? Did you feel like you were able to immerse yourself immediately in just the political situation in Germany? Really just like feel like that you could dive in and capture this moment in the film.
No, because I didn't even look at it as a political statement. I approached it as a story about grief. Because what I think is so powerful about the movie is, yes, it's in German, and it's about neo-Nazis and an actual attack that happened in Germany. But we all live in this world. This could be jihadists. This could be some, crazy shooter in Las Vegas, for all means. It could happen anywhere. What I thought was so powerful is that we live in this world where people and victims are being reduced to numbers, right? 50 people died, 110 people died. What are the motives of the killer? But we don't hear about the people that stay behind. And how can you live with this? Can you even live with this? And what happens 6 months later, 8 months later? It's a movie that I think it's a truly movie that connects us, because we're the ones that stay behind, and what I took away from meeting victims is this rage that they had, because they were something was taken away from them out of their control, and in 1 second their life changed. And the guilt that they left, like, why did I drop my kid off at the concert? Why was I late picking her up from school that day? Or that what we have to live with that stays. It really, really stayed with me, marked me.
So you did 6 months of research leading up to shooting. Before the cameras actually started rolling, since you did shoot in order, did you do any rehearsal, on set as well? Like, was there, with your other actors, did you work out how certain scenes were going to play, or?
Mostly beforehand. I was present. Like, Fatih asked me to be like 2 months before we started filming in Hamburg. And he cast everyone around me. So I actually I read with every single actor in the movie, everybody that auditioned, I read with every single person. And then we had long table reads, like not really rehearsals, but like just talking about the scene. And then the day of, it was pretty much all clear. Of course, things moved, but it wasn't like a major, thing.
I love that the film is so clearly about your point of view, about Katja's point of view. That it's not about the perpetrators. We learned so very little about them in this, and I think that's something Yeah, it's a beautiful thing to actually just get inside the victim's head, because so often, when there is a mass shooting or whatever, you see the gunman and you see their face and their name and why did they do this, and you don't really think about the victims as much. And was that one of the things that really appealed to you, and that really struck you in the screenplay?
Yeah, that's one of the main reasons I feel like this film to me stuck out, and was different. It's actually, it's kind of a family movie, because it is about a family and a woman and grief.
Yeah. And I think that it's amazing how you really show the stages of grief as well. I mean, initially you're just in shock and you're so numb, um, and and then eventually that turns to rage and anger. Your outburst, Katya's outburst at the at the trial. And then that becomes something a little bit steelier, as Katya embarks on revenge. For each of those phases, was there something in particular that you kept in mind or that you did to prepare, just for each day of shooting? Because those are very, very dark places to go, and
Yeah, but all people that I've met go through these stages. All of every single one thinks about revenge, is angered, is lost. Some think the possibility of starting fresh, having another child, and it's those are all the things that I saw. Um, and the ending was always in the script. And when I first read it, obviously I was like, wow, how do I get there? I mean, and then each day, you start becoming that person. You talk to another family and what they did, and you hear stories. And it's, this movie is not, I'm not saying when this is what everybody should do, but that's what she does. And I get it, and what would you do?
so much of your performance in the film is really physical, is nonverbal. It's your posture, it's the way you carry yourself at different points. What were you thinking of? Like, how did you go about just thinking like, I should, my posture should be this, at this moment when I'm still in shock, or
No, you don't think about that. I think it kind of, I know, it comes with the thing, I mean, I don't know, I don't know. It's like, you can't help it. It's just there, it's like for example, like I lost so much weight without ever weighing myself. I just know that my jeans were really loose, I didn't sleep. I couldn't get out of it. It's just what we do. I think every day you prep something like this, you become more that person, and everything starts to make sense. You dress differently, you hold yourself differently, and you don't know what you're going to be like when you're feeling that pain.
Yeah, yeah. So you said it was fairly serious throughout on set, and which is interesting because sometimes, just for the actors in attendance here, sometimes there's a self-conscious effort to have sort of a lighter mood on set, but this was really just like keeping the tone throughout. And I'm curious, what were your shooting days like? Like, how long was each day of shooting? And
Generally, shooting days are shorter in Europe than they are in the U.S. It's 12 hours, including lunch. So, comparison, really short days. But it's not that I meant to keep it serious all the time. It's just it be- going to those places. I think, to me, anyways, requires a certain level of concentration and being in something, and then while we were filming, my stepdad passed away, who was really my dad. And I just felt like I was drowning the whole time. Like, there was no way, like, I was going to go home and, have a couple drinks with my friends and have a massage, Like, it just didn't, it was just one of those things where, stuff comes together.
were there moments that you and Fatih improvised together, that you changed something in the script while you were shooting it?
Not really. The only thing that changed is the scene in the gymnast where, the police, I'm looking for my family and they're telling me that a man and a kid are missing. Um, and I have this breakdown, which, by the way, I don't remember shooting at all. it was such an out-of-body experience. But I remember that a whole scene dropped because originally in the story, they came to my house and told me, yes, it's your husband and your kid. But I remember as we were filming it, as a mother or as a wife, whatever, you would know. You would know right then and there, So that's the only time it sort of changed.
Wow. It's just such an amazing performance. It just talking about it just brings all the emotion back of watching it. I think for all the actors who are here, your journey is so interesting because you started as a model and you have worked in multiple languages. I'm just curious, like, when did you first know that you wanted to become an actor?
Well, I really started out with ballet. I was a ballet dancer and I studied with the Royal Academy of London from a very young age on. So I remember, all my vacations as a kid, I would go to London and be in that school and we would perform, and that was really great, and being on stage. And then I had an injury on my knee and I couldn't do it. Also, I wasn't really talented enough, let's be honest. But anyways, that fell apart. And I remember being mopey because I didn't want to be in school. Like, I just didn't see myself as an academic. And someone had seen me dancing and said, oh, you should be a model, which I was like, yeah. And so I moved to Paris, and it was kind of great. I got financially independent, which is, not nothing. And I traveled the world and I learned French. And that's when I really first went to movies, because I'm from a small village in Germany, which has like 2,000 people. And we never went to see the movies. Like, my movie experience was Mary Poppins, really, on television, in German. So, I didn't know you could become an actor. And I remember, so I was living in Paris, and I started dating this guy who was an actor, and he showed me all the great French movies, of that time. And I had this romantic idea of smoking lots of cigarettes and wearing striped shirts and just being. And so he said, well, try it, why not? And go to drama school. I didn't even know you could go to drama school. And so I did. And that was awesome. I was like, I didn't go to college. So here I was hanging out with kids my age, smoking lots of cigarettes and talking about Molière and Victor Hugo and working on my scenes, And it was great. And I had an accent, because I was German, obviously. And they embraced me, and my favorite actress of the time is Romy Schneider, who was, I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's an Austrian actress who moved to Paris and married Alain Delon. They were really, And then I went on auditions in France, and I got a movie, and I was like, this is it, this is what I want to do. And they've been so kind to me, the French. My career started there, and my career started in Cannes, really. So that's how it started,
And then you came to Hollywood. And since we're the SAG-AFTRA Foundation here, we always like to know, like, how did you first get your SAG card?
I remember, so my second film was Troy, which I'd never been to Hollywood, okay? So I got this movie out of being in Paris. They cast it all over the world. And while I was filming Troy, you know how it is in Hollywood, they're like, all of a sudden, it's like, who's this girl? So I got this other movie, and they said, well, but she needs a SAG card. So what's a SAG card, Because we don't really have unions in France. Like, well, you have to pay X amount of money, but then you can work in America. And I was like, why? Why do I have to? And like, you understand, you're gonna have health insurance and all this stuff, and and you're part of a community, and in Europe, health insurance is like a given. I mean, like you're like, okay, what's the upside for me here, And then my peers, my American actors were like, you don't understand how hard it is in America, and you should meet the agents. Oh my God, and we have to stick together. It's like, so, and they took me to a couple of meetings. In Hollywood, And I was, this is the greatest thing ever. Wait, we can't fail because we're going to stick together. You know what I mean? Like, they can't beat us down because no matter what happens, if we stick together, they can't work us 18 hours a day and all this stuff. And that was great. Like, honestly, a new experience. We don't have unions in France or Germany, It was, honestly, when I finally got my SAG card, it was one of the proudest moments in my career because I realized I'm part of a bigger thing, Yeah, it's pretty great. It's great.
That's fantastic. And you've played such an amazing variety of characters. I mean, from Helen of Troy to Bridget von Hammersmark in Inglourious Bastards to. I,
Yeah, thank you. You nominated me. Nobody believed it, by the way. I remember getting a phone call from Harvey Weinstein. She's like, well, we didn't believe that was going to happen, but you got one. I remember that. I was like, thanks, Harvey, for your support. That's awesome. You know.
and now to Katya in this film. I'm just curious. I mean, is there any role, a character, fictional or historical, that you would love to play more than any?
I kind of want to play Marlene Dietrich. Because I feel like there's never been a good movie about her or a mini series, and so I'm trying to produce one, and actually Fatih is going to direct it. About a very specific time in her life. It's called Women at War. It's when she was already a big Hollywood movie star, and she left her career behind to go to the front, and for 3 years, and she was really active, and she helped smuggle Jewish immigrant artists from Germany into the United States to protect them, And my grandmother was a Polish immigrant to Germany, Jewish, and my grandfather hid her all her life, and I just remember that being such a big impact in her life, and Fatih, who's Turkish, and what's happening in Turkey right now, has been very helpful, having Turkish artists and filmmakers come to Germany because they're being pursued by the current government, And I just feel like that's a really interesting part of Marlene's life that deserves to be seen in a miniseries.
It's so fascinating. I mean, it's such an incredible life. And I always love, when I go to Berlin, there's Marlene Dietrich Platz, and they have a plaque, celebrating her, because it's really just an incredible
And yet,
life.
in Germany, people really didn't like her. They thought she was a traitor, Yeah.
Well, I guess just to conclude, for your fellow actors here, you've had an amazing journey, but what advice would you give your fellow actors for their own careers? What is something that you've learned that you think every actor should know?
Oh, I don't know. It's hard, I remember, like, for example, in my career, my second movie was Troy, and I was completely green. I really didn't know shit, I didn't know. I was trying to pretend I knew what I was doing, but I really didn't, And as it is so often in Hollywood, they plug unknown actors from obscurity because they don't have to pay them much money, and you look a certain way. And I felt like I became famous from overnight, and I didn't deserve it, or I wasn't ready for it, And it really screwed with my head for a long time, because where do you go from playing Helen of Troy, I mean, really. And so many people in Hollywood, just thought, oh, she's going to be the pretty girl. She's the ex-model that's going to be in every movie, and it's nothing to do of how, oh, poor me, I'm so pretty. It's not that. But when you know that you want to learn, and, I look the way I look, you look the way you look, it doesn't matter, it shouldn't matter, because actors, what they do is they convey emotions and they tell stories. And frankly, this is just a tool, right? And we learn that. I think we all learn that. And to be limited by other people, or seemingly being limited by other people, was really hard. And I felt like really lucky that I'm European and I got to go back to Europe and make other films. Or in The Fade came along at a time in my life, in my career, where I was ready, So I would say to young actors, like, it's the best job in the world, but you gotta be strong, I think it's not an easy ride.
Wow. Well, Diane, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming.